Live from VentureX Studios, it's JP, Kathy, and the crew.
Well, good morning and welcome to JP, Kathy, and the crew. JP will be joining us via link. The link, whatever. Is that a Restream link, Nathaniel? Is it Zoom? Okay, Zoom, by the magic of Zoom, at 8 o'clock. Of course, coming up here in just a few minutes, we've got Dr. Norm Clothier. Happy Monday. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. Would love to hear about your weekend. I'm going to share a little bit about something I did this weekend, and that was the thin blue line ball. And I'll be talking about this after we talk with our medical expert, Dr. Norm Clothier. This was amazing, and I'm going to challenge the crew for us to get a table together for the 2022 Thin Blue Line Ball. Can't say enough amazing things about this event, about this organization that puts this on. So anyways, we'll be talking about that a little bit later. Does Dr. Clothier, is he in the waiting room yet? Oh, perfect. Fantastic. Yeah, he's going to be obviously updating us on more COVID information and just prevention, what the vaccines are doing. Are we building herd immunity and all of those kind of good things? So we will have him on here momentarily. How was your weekend, Nathaniel? Oh, good. All right, so we're getting Dr. Norm Clothier on. Again, if you've got any questions, there he is. Hop on our we've YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, right? I don't Facebook, whatever, one of the social media platforms that we're on. Hop on and ask questions because Dr. Clothier can answer those live. Good morning, Dr. Clothier. How are you?
Good morning.
How are you?
Great. Did you just make up about two or three of those?
I think I did. The Snapagram, okay. the face place. Sure. Okay. You're more social media savvy than I am.
Yes, I understand. So very good. So we need to jump into a few things COVID related. And,
yes.
You know, someday I think we're all hopeful. I know I am very hopeful that at some point we won't have to be talking about COVID weekly or bi-weekly or whatever, but
right.
there's just more news. And I think
there
the big
is.
events of today,
yep.
that I want people to understand. One is we have about 25% of adults in Texas vaccinated now. And I think that's really remarkable.
Did you say 25%?
I did. That's like
wow.
20 and 30%.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that's pretty amazing. And, you know, realizing that the vaccine was only given an emergency approval less than 5 months ago, the virus only been known for about 18 months. I find that to be incredible. So I appreciate my medical scientist colleagues in the process of trying to understand viruses, what to do about them. And I think it's really quite incredible.
Absolutely.
So that's very good news. Now that's that and the fact that cases in Texas have been generally low for about 3 weeks. That's all the good news I have for you this morning. So there are a lot of concern areas, and I want people to be aware of these. And then here in a minute, I want to talk about travel and having the vaccine and such, because there's a lot of talk about that too,
especially with the summer coming up. I have friends who literally, I was at several political events this weekend, and friends, that was a hot topic of debate. They were like, no, yes, you have to have a vaccine to travel. No, you don't. Yes, that's a very hot topic right now.
Well, we'll warm it up by talking about a couple other topics and then get to the hot topic here in a minute then. But the warm-up topics are that right now, despite the fact we feel pretty good right here locally, mostly kind of sort of pseudo well about how we're doing, there are some hot spots there, super big concerns. And I'm not even sure if that's really a very good grammatical sentence or not, but they are really concerning. And that is in Michigan, cases are actually at an all-time high. And that seems odd because, if you think about it, that's not that far away. It's actually in the mainland U.S. for those who don't know. And it's, it has seen an increase in cases to the point they have more cases over the last 7 days than they've had in the entire 15 months or so that cases have been able to be tested. And then next door, in the neighboring states, cases are up. Minnesota is actually at a second highest level that they've been all along. And then up in Toronto, and I want to put in a little bit of word on Toronto. Every election cycle, I hear people say, "Oh, in Canada, the health system is so awesome because it's socialized and it's free, and you don't have to think or worry. All you have to do is cross the border and come to America and get your health care, and all those things." Yeah. And in Canada, in Toronto right now, cases are also escalating dramatically. And, I just mentioned our vaccination rate in Texas, 25%. In Toronto, it's running about 9%.
Really?
One source said 11%.
Wow.
And the reason is the government's in charge of that, and they're rationing. It's interesting because here, the government's in charge of it, but people are, up in arms about, we got to get the vaccine, we got to get it out there, we get volunteers. In a non-paid system, I think there's a dramatic drop in the feeling that it has value. And I think there's really a problem that's being exposed there, that even in their lovely socialized system that people seem to be thrilled with, that they can't get the immunization out. So, I think it's sad, but that's right there, close to us too, not far away. And then in Brazil, there is a horrible situation with the mutation probably, but the problem is they have extremely limited attempts at testing. So nobody's real clear on that. They've been at all-time highs for hospitalization. They only have some communities that have what we would consider here to be adequate hospitalization, to much more divided nation in terms of population. You're either in a huge city or you're out in the middle of, kind of lack of what we would consider civilization and hospital care.
Right.
There's a food shortage in Brazil because there has been such a hit with the COVID virus that they are actually now limited in food supply and the economy to be able to handle that food supply. So that's a very serious concern. And then, for those who think, well, that's just, that's different than our culture, so we wouldn't worry about that. Germany actually hit 6 of the last 7 days, new record highs in cases. So I would suggest that this plague is not over. And I think we do need to be careful about, just the fundamental basics. Wash your hands. Keep your social distancing.
Yes.
Don't let down your guard. It'd be almost like saying, I haven't had a nearly fatal car wreck for a year. I'm just going to drive blindfolded now, if we just give up on things.
Right.
And, I think it's really important to keep paying attention. So those are real world cases. They're real world concerns. And, I want to point out, just for the people that tend to be a little bit unlikely to believe a lot of the viral stuff, that those are worldwide situations. I mentioned Canada, Germany, Brazil, and of course the United States, and that's a pretty big deal. Then if you start looking over kind of across the world, China claimed they had a fantastic vaccine early on, and they actually had a story leak out that they are showing very low immune rates with their vaccine, and that there's a surge. Now, that's a communist country. We're not going to get real numbers, almost certainly, but just the fact that story is leaking out makes me think it's probably worse than what we would otherwise think. And then, North Korea, the most quiet and suppressive nation of communism in the world, has actually said that there is a crisis going on in terms of food supply there, because so many people have had COVID, so many resources have gone both to the hospital and I'm sure to some of the palaces there, that they are, the country is in trouble there. So these are very real, very challenging issues. So
Well,
when we,
yeah, and here's the thing.
Yep.
I think we get so in our own little bubble of what we're talking about that we don't think about around the world. America has really stepped up with this as far as making sure people are taken care of and things of that nature. And that started under President Trump's administration. And I've just seen, people giving, neighbors who can't drive rides to get shots and all kinds of things like that. Good for us. Good for us.
yeah, and a lot of them are hidden. President Trump ordered very early on for there being increase in syringes
Yes.
and needles, foreseeing the issue of vaccines. And then, of course, he encouraged the FDA to do an emergency approval. And I think that, both those things in retrospect are going to look brilliant over time. And
Agree.
And I think, the immunization gives people a great hope. There are obvious limitations. I would suggest, though, too, there are obvious difficulties with having the virus being in the ICU for a couple weeks, things like that. I would get the vaccine if you possibly can. And now that, everybody up 16 and up is approved for it or allowed to get it, and there are studies in children, there are studies in pregnant women and nursing women showing safety and showing immunity for the baby. And, at this point, I just would say get the vaccine, don't get the virus if you can help it. And we're also, about a third of people are showing long-term effects of the virus in terms of, kind of a reawakening of some inflammatory responses, some literal brain, kidney, lung, and heart issues that I think are also very concerning because we have no experience with those.
Right.
That is a brand new situation, with this virus. So I personally would not risk it. So let's talk about travel and the vaccine, because the CDC came out with a kind of vague comment that said, if you're fully immunized plus 2 weeks or plus 4 weeks, depending on which CDC site you look at, then you should be able to, do some travel.
Right.
Now, I believe what they meant at that point was necessary travel, going to see a sick relative, going to take care of somebody out safe, whatever. I don't really think they meant go out to the beaches in Florida and spend all the time you can near people that probably aren't vaccinated.
Right.
Things like that. So it's really a challenge. So what I would suggest, just from a practical standpoint with travel, is that you consider a few things. One is obviously what your timing was with the vaccine, whether you have any symptoms. I would still suggest if you have symptoms, because no vaccine is going to prove to be 100%, no prior infection is proven to be 100% immunity, that if you have symptoms, you should properly follow the protocol of don't go expose other people.
Right.
And the second thing is, before you travel, look at the numbers where you're going. Look up in news, website, CDC, World Health Organization, Johns Hopkins tracking site. Use any of those to see where it is you're going. If you were flying into Toronto right now, personally, I wouldn't go. The cases are up. If you're flying into Rio de Janeiro, I wouldn't go. That's those are hotbeds of infection. And you really don't want to throw yourself in there, even if you're feeling pretty good today. And
I think that's really smart. You've said you've always you're real big on better safe than sorry and be prepared. So basically, if you're looking to travel to see family, if you're looking to travel for work, if you're looking to travel for pleasure, do your homework in advance.
Absolutely. I think it's just critical to do that and know where you're going, what the relative risks are. Plus, there are some restrictions on travel. You don't want to travel somewhere where you then have to quarantine 10 days if you don't have a plan for that going into it. So, don't be surprised if you end up being quarantined somewhere. You need to know that you could be quarantined somewhere.
Right.
And what the rules and restrictions are on that. Look up the local rules on things like if you're going to see, your aunt who's been ill for a while and is in an assisted living home, look up what the rules are today and find out what's going on. Don't be surprised when you get there and you're not going to change the system.
Right.
So those things are always smart. Obviously, in the realm of taking care of people during the COVID pandemic, I think a lot of things have slipped by the wayside. And I want to mention just a couple other immunizations that are important. If you're going to a country with a high hepatitis A rate, then get a hepatitis A vaccine before you go. And that requires some months of preparation because it's a series of 2, like many shots are, by the way. Don't be scared off by a series of 2 shots for COVID. But it's a series of 2, 6 months apart. And so you need to kind of prepare yourself for travel in many ways. I don't want to go through all the immunizations, but it's just important. Pay attention to where infection hotbeds are. There are areas of the world with measles and polio, and you want to make sure that you're protected against those too. I want to remind people who are going to be enrolling in college, whether that's for the fall semester, for online classes, for the summer, for dual credit, any of those things, you must have both of your Menactra shots done, meningitis shots, prior to registering. And that's even for an online class. So that hasn't gone away during the pandemic. It's still important to pay attention to the diseases that have been around for a long time.
Right.
I also just want to mention, anytime you're in a crowd, and you can find this anywhere from the Dallas County website, Dallas County Health Department website, Texas, U.S., CDC, World Health Organization, any of those that you have already determined are okay and not politically a problem for you. And I think they are health information, not political information. But I've had plenty of people tell me that the CDC is only political. So I just want to mention that. It is the Centers for Disease Control. They do want to control disease, not allow it to run rampant in society. And it's not a political organization. But I kind of digress there. But if you look at any of those sites, you can see that if you're in a crowd, you are still supposed to basically view it as, even if you're immunized, you need to realize other people may not be. Right. You might be a carrier of the virus. You don't know. And so even if it's minutes, let's say somebody with the virus you walk up to and talk to, and they spread it to you briefly, and you never get any evidence of infection, but you carry it on your nasal passage or mouth and go talk to somebody else who's not immunized, that's the way things can spread. And there are people with, odd stories out there where they've seen nobody and gone nowhere and they suddenly had the virus. And I think it's just very, first, I think they have been here and there. They're just not going much. But I think it's an extremely contagious virus and needs to be honored in that way.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I want to go back to something you said at the very beginning of your segment. And we talked about this it seems like it's almost every day that on the show that we mentioned something about COVID or something about, hygiene and all, how it's more important now. And, I just wonder, I myself and you and I have talked about this, I always end up, every year, I end up getting the flu, sometimes both strains, because of my asthma and my lungs are compromised. I end up with either walking pneumonia, or bronchitis along with it. And it's interesting, this year, knock on wood or knock on whatever this material, this table is, I did not get the flu. Now I got a real bad stomach flu during the summer, but the typical one where you're having trouble breathing, all that stuff, did not get that. And I just wonder, maybe we should have been washing our hands all along. I washed my hands all along, but maybe we should have been washing our hands all along.
Well, you mentioned a couple of interesting things there. One is that it is true, washing your hands plus social distancing is actually seemingly quite helpful. If you're not in a room full of infected people, like, as hard as it is on churches, restaurants, work meetings, social gatherings, big weddings, whatever, all those things, I think the lesson is those are an infection risk. And what we'll have to determine over time is that we just have to realize there's infection risk and mitigate that where we can, deal with it the best we can. But it is true. If you're in a gathering of people, you run the risk of infection. If you're in a closed room with the air being trapped in there, you're at risk. The other thing that I think is really interesting about that you mentioned that I like to bring up occasionally is that when you mentioned the stomach bug,
Right.
people refer that to that as stomach flu, and influenza is a respiratory virus. It's cough, body aches, fever. There is viral gastroenteritis that causes more GI symptoms, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea,
Right.
cramps. But it's not a flu. And it's interesting because I find so many people tell me, oh, I'm not getting that flu shot because I got it last year and I ended up in here, 6 weeks later and I was throwing up for a day with the flu. And that's not the flu. That's a stomach gastroenteritis
Right.
or a GI gastroenteritis. But what I wanted to mention about that is that with COVID, there actually has been crossover. And that's kind of a weird thing, too. That it's been respiratory, as has been acknowledged for a long time with coronaviruses for decades, but it also has that gastrointestinal component. So there are still things we must learn about the virus and must, figure out ways to both head it off and treat it and prevent it with like vaccine. That's more than just heading it off by social issues. And I'm very sensitive to the fact that we need businesses to be in business. I think that is critical.
Yes.
I really feel horrible for the businesses that have been hit so hard by limited numbers, having to change their style of business. I mean, those are hard things that obviously hit many, many, many in very difficult ways. And I think, that's something I know there were a couple of comments a couple of weeks ago that doctors don't really understand because doctors have been fine. And, it doesn't matter to me if you feel that way, but I just want to point out that doctors have been facing, basically potential death each day for a year or so until the vaccine came along, and we're feeling a little better about that. But, it's hitting everybody, and it's all adaptation, and it's all about honoring the people around you, trying not to infect them, and trying to be reasonable about it. I love it that we're able to go out and eat, that people can feel that, but I want them to be careful when they do so and honor that worker there. We saw a huge impact of infection in restaurants. That's one reason they got closed down or cut to half, was that restaurant workers were getting terrible rates of infection, like factory meat packing facilities. All kinds of industries were hit extremely hard.
Yes.
And that's why numbers had to go down, or else you'd be down by numbers through death and disability instead, and that's not favorable. That's obviously not the right thing to do.
Right. Well, and now do you see this as far as masks? And it's interesting. I'm just now starting to see some of the places I go to. Oh, well, okay. Big case in point. My husband and I took an Uber to an event we went to this weekend, and both Uber drivers, like, we were getting ready to, because we assumed that you still had to put your mask on in the Uber, and I had my mask. I was like, let me put this on before I get into the car. I had it around my wrist as a bracelet, like I often wear my mask, because that's very effective. But he said, "Oh, no, you don't have to. I've been vaccinated. It's your choice." And then on the ride home, same situation. So I see, and then there's been a few places I've gone into, and I've asked, I was like, because I didn't see a sign on the door. Now I know, like, my nail salon, my hair salon, both still very strict. You do not get in, and if you don't bring a mask, they've got one for you. But there have been other places, and people are like, it's your choice. So I see more and more places beginning to go with, it's your choice if you want to wear a mask or not. Do you think that that's going to be more of the trend as we see more vaccinations?
Well, I think so, because I think people feel safer with the vaccine, and we believe they're safer. The challenge is that it's not 100%. And so, that's part of that realm where, as I was saying, I think we've got to kind of find a way to learn to live with the fact there's a virus in society. And we do need to be respectful of those things. I wouldn't do a lot of close contact, or get in there and start coughing, sneezing, hacking all over the place. And, that's one of those reasons that if you feel any symptoms of an illness, you really should still self-isolate.
Right.
Because you don't know if it's, coronavirus or not. And I think that probably, my guess is places like in Germany and Toronto and Michigan and Minnesota, that there was a general letdown in the protection feeling. People have protection fatigue, or, they just don't want to deal with the mask and hand washing as much and such. And people will slip back to those old habits. We have given them permission, because we've seen a reduction in numbers, and the governor's said in the state that it's a business or local decision instead of, a state mandate.
Right.
And so that has allowed for that freedom. The challenge there, again, is, if that freedom involves somebody who's not vaccinated and otherwise ill, and you don't know. It's kind of like, we've had quite a few gripey people come into my office that just don't want to wear masks. And
right.
My feeling is always, you don't know if I have a 91-year-old lady back here who's extremely, on the edge of illness, and I don't want you walking down the hall and bringing, a virus in that may get her. And we can't tell people those things. We can't go out front and say, oh, look, I got, sick looking lady that you can't, I don't want to infect. So we have chosen as a business to ask for people to wear masks and to be careful. And, most people respect that. Some people really want to argue that. Just last week, a guy told me there is no virus, and, it doesn't exist.
And he has not had anybody that he knows pass away. Yeah, the virus is real. And again, I know at first that was, there were a number of folks who were like, at this point, I know, oh my goodness, I know my count is now over 20 people who I know personally who have had the virus. And then I know 2 people who have passed from it. At some point, I mean, you don't, that's just, I'm not trying to name call, but at that point, it's just ignorance if you think that there's not a virus with this certain strain kind of a thing. And, and here's the thing, like, I'm not.
So, it's still about respecting other people.
Yeah.
It just is. And I think people need to come to that realization. And there are certain places where you should wear a mask. I think in a medical facility where you kind of expect there to be people who are sick, I think it's very proper to wash hands, wear a mask, keep some reasonable distance, don't clog people into a small room for a long length of time. And, it just needs to be a practical approach to help everyone, help the person you don't even know you're helping.
Right. Well, and it's interesting. I mean, I know you've got a bus to move, but yes, you're MC Hammer today, Dr. MC Hammer,
or at least yeah.
But I think like I can see situations where I go into a small store. I was it was kind of like an antique mall type style place the other day. I was in the store at a time where barely anybody was there. So I had my mask down, and I was like, okay, if I get by somebody and they look at me sideways, okay, if I feel like I need to, I'll pull my mask up. But I think, most people are being smart about that. And hey, if I'm 20 feet away from you, okay, what's the point? But I do think in a doctor's office, and I've taken both my son and my daughter recently to different doctor's appointments, and I'm okay with wearing a mask there, because if I go into, especially a practice like yours, there's a good chance there's somebody there getting tested for COVID who has it. Right? I mean, a doctor's office, it seems like would be the one place you'd be okay with it.
Odds.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And in a large medical facility area like we're in, it's, those are just statistical odds that's the case.
Yep.
Well, do have a great week.
You too. Have a blessed week. Thanks for all the good info.
The information can be helpful to people.
Oh, it's always helpful, Dr. Clothier. We appreciate you. Have a great one, and we'll see you next Monday.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks, Dr. Clothier. Dr. Norm Clothier, and he is just such a wealth of information. And again, this is one of those things we bring you, and he has been so great about reporting with the ever-changing, ongoing things that have to do with COVID. We have literally every week that he's been on had some kind of a discussion about COVID and about what what's changed, and heck, there's there could be something changed by tonight, but we're not taking any stance on what you should do. Hey, if you want to wear a mask, great. If you don't, great. I do hope you wash your hands. That's something that has been so disturbing ever since we got on the topic of COVID, and we had there was no toilet paper, and then that led to discussions about hand washing and hand sanitizer. And I did find out, and still it's jaw dropping to me, the amount of people who will go into a public restroom, and then not wash their hands before they come out. Anyways, that just still makes me crazy. That just makes me, that's cringeworthy. That's still a word, right? Nathaniel's like, okay, sure, old lady. No, but take this information and do with it what you feel is best for you personally and your health, for your immediate family, for those folks that you have inside the bubble. I referred to when we were talking to Dr. Clothier, having had a stomach bug this past summer. Well, I had also been exposed to somebody who had COVID, who had actually come into my home, and that was back when it was taking like 7 days to get test results back and all this kind of stuff. So since I had all really bad stomach bug, flu, whatever it was, I decided, and there were 3 weeks, and this was back when JP and I were at the radio studio downtown. 3 weeks I stayed home, one until I knew if I had the virus, and then also just if I, just because I didn't want to, I've got my immediate family that I hang out with on a regular basis, but then like my family up here at the Venture X Studios and my friends who I hang out with, there's certain people who I either work with or I spend a lot of time with, and out of respect for them, I chose to self-quarantine. Now, very fortunately, I did not end up with COVID, neither did anybody else in my household, but that was one of those better safe than sorry. The government didn't need to tell me to do that. I was able to figure that out on my own. So, take this information from Dr. Clothier and do with it what you will, according to what your needs are. If you're a 21-year-old and you're out and about and having a good time and you're in great health, you know what? You may not want to wear a mask anywhere. And, fortunately, the governor of Texas has said, hey, it's your choice now. You do what you want. But I do get, and we're getting ready to have JP come on, and then I'm going to talk about somebody. Michelle was asking what my T-shirt is. Glad you asked, because we're about to talk about that. But, I think in a doctor's office is one place, like a doctor's or a dentist's office is one place where I think I would wear the mask, because chances are in a doctor's office, somebody there is sick. So even if I'm there for a well visit, my kids are there for a well visit, somebody may be there because they're sick. So anyways, that's, do with that what you will. But JP, are you on? Do we have a visual on JP or just voice?
No, just voice. I'm so beautiful you wouldn't be able to handle it.
Oh, is your beauty just too striking today?
I am so beautiful that I am the sun in your heart.
Oh, you're so poetic today. You're so poetic today. Well, JP's on with us now. He's got a bus to move to a work site here in a little while. But JP and I had kind of gone back and forth this weekend. And JP, I'm going to challenge us and members of the crew for the Thin Blue Line Ball next April, which I have the date for that. It is April 9th, 2022. I'm going to throw a challenge out right now for the crew. I think you can get a table for as low as $700. So if we all go in on it, that will cut the cost. I'm going to challenge us to have a JP, Kathy, and the crew table at the Thin Blue Line Ball next year. JP, you would have cried your mascara off.
Oh, I absolutely would. First of all, everybody looks nice. I really enjoyed the picture.
Yeah.
Sad that I missed it here. And then also, some of our very sweet hosts lost their dad. So I want to make sure we send prayers out.
Definitely.
To Leilani and their family.
Yeah, Leilani lost her father, Paul. And if you'll remember, just a few weeks ago, we had celebrated his birthday on air. Leilani and Mike Rumsfeld are dear friends of both mine and JP's. And Leilani is very close with her father, and he has been on hospice care for a while, and has been at home, and her husband and her kids have been taking care of Paul, and he passed this weekend. So please pray for them. This is a very tough loss for their family, and they are dear friends of ours, and they are members of the crew. So we do ask for prayers for them. So thank you for that, John. Let's talk a little bit about America's, and I'm going to put this in our comment section, America's Defenders Organization. And this is a group, and I'm going to read their mission statement, and then JP and I can go back and forth on just how important it is, especially now more than ever, to back our men and women in blue. So the mission of the America's Defenders Organization, which they are the ones who have since 2016 put on the thin blue line ball here in the Collin County area. The mission is quite simple: support those that give so much to our nation. We have an intense motivation to support disabled veterans that have answered the call of duty to the United States and defended the nation's values and families. We have equally intense motivation to support our nation's law enforcement officers. These men and women in uniform continue to support their communities and defend the values of this great nation. The service to our country from each group doesn't come without sacrifice to mind and body, and we understand that. AMDEF does what it can to honor the military and law enforcement service of our elite citizens. And so the T-shirt I have on, Michelle, and thank you for asking, my husband and I bought American Defenders Foundation T-shirts to help, support financially the organization. JP, my eyes are still swollen from Saturday night. They had, a police horse that came in. They had bagpipes, and they were playing Amazing Grace. And they had, of course, if you've ever seen Amazing Grace done with bagpipes, and then they have the one lone bagpipe player that walks off by themselves, signifying those who have passed. And of course, I'm going to start getting choked up here. They showed. And it was beautiful. And they had a box of tissues at the table. And then my girlfriend Brooke, whose table I sat at, she had told me to bring tissues. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm thinking, I'm sure it'll be a nice moving ceremony. I had no idea. I had like a wad of Kleenex in front of me by the time it was over. But JP, what really struck me was when they showed the faces of over 300 men and women in blue who have passed over this past year. And just in some tough stories. I saw pictures, and man, these officers looked younger than my kids. They looked like some of them looked like they were 12 years old. They looked so young, who had lost their lives. That really struck me hard. And then JP, the other thing that struck me hard was the officers that lost their lives this year in the line of duty, and they looked like they were probably about a week out of retirement. They might have been out on their last call. And that breaks your heart, because you think, well, that's a wife or a husband who sat at home for all these decades. Finally, they think, oh my goodness, I don't have to worry about my spouse being, injured or killed in the line of duty. And they're just days away, and their lives are taken. So JP, I know you're a big supporter. We're all big supporters here at JP, Kathy, and the crew of our men and women in blue. So what are your thoughts on that, and kind of how the country's turned on them, and what we need to do to turn that around?
Well, I think that there's a battle that's going on. Yeah. It has been brewing for a while. And it's not that I don't believe the country has turned on them. What I believe is the people that have a hatred for the police, they have a disgust for the police. I think they've become a lot more verbal and a lot more violent than what they have been in the past. And because I think that there is still, I believe that there is still a strong support for our men and women in blue. And cities that have decided they wanted to try to defund the police have found out, I call 911 now and nobody shows up. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How about that?
Crime's gone up? What does this you say? What does this you speak of?
Why don't you enjoy your social justice, social welfare participant virtually coming to your home to help you dissect the armed robbery going on.
Or a
in your
rapist.
house.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, and so,
Or a stalker.
yeah, I mean, and that's what we should have done, is taken cities that have defunded police and given them a virtual social welfare, social justice warrior to appear in their crisis. That might have helped them out a little bit. Anyways, my point is that I do believe that the police still have the support of this nation. It's just that there is a small contingency that yells louder and becomes more violent.
Bingo,
And they
ding,
just
ding, ding,
determined,
yells
in fact, or
louder.
found out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what they found out in the main media, the CNNs and the MSNBCs, on this latest the two police officers, one that was injured and one that was killed in D.C.
Yep.
They found out and disproved the fact that this guy got out of his car and started slashing them and cutting them with a knife, and then, in fact, that didn't happen. And they found out that he was a part of a black militant group that is extremely liberal and very socialist. And
Have you heard?
Okay, trying to storm the Capitol.
So so JP, this is something you bring up. Then this takes responsibility of the media, of journalists, of people who report these things. And again, disclaimer, JP and I, even, during our many years on radio, we don't consider ourselves reporters. We're an entertainment show. Now, do we report things? Absolutely. Do we hit hard topics? Absolutely. So JP, what you just mentioned, where you read about that somewhere, right? You didn't see that on the mainstream media. See, okay, so
that's correct. It was not in the mainstream media. No.
So then, okay, so there may be people who just now found out about that because you mentioned it. So is that irresponsible, and does that further perpetuate this, like you said, and I'm doing air quotes, very loud group of people who are trying to defund the police and spit in their face and spew venom on them?
Well, of course, it's absolutely it is a rhetorical line that socialists want to run so that they can try to create fear in people. And it's amazing. I mean, take Buttigieg, for example. Old boy comes out and says, oh, the new jobs plan is going to create 19 million jobs. Well, when his facts got called to the table, it's more like 2.3 million jobs. And then Buttigieg had to go on all the weekend shows and apologize. Like, yeah, I guess we did exaggerate that number. Is anybody calling for his head? Anybody asking him to resign?
They wouldn't.
He lied to the American people.
It's okay.
And nobody cared.
He gets a hall pass. He gets a hall pass, and that's, you're talking about Buttigieg, who was the mayor, who ran for president, and now is the transportation secretary. And you're right. So, okay, so why do they get a hall pass? And again, this is something that the media has, like Walter Cronkite. Would he ever have put out misinformation back in the day?
No.
Give
me a break.
And so nowadays you've just got folks who are just reporting it. And then you've got those of us who take to social media. Check if you see something and you're like, I'm outraged by this, check your facts before you share a story, because it can look like, and this is what, you try to teach to that younger generation. It can look like it is coming from a reputable news source. It can look all fancy and the font's all good, and it goes to this website that's like hard-hitting news, blah, blah, blah. It could be a 40-year-old playing video games in his basement putting that out. I mean, it is what it is. So just be very careful, because then what happens?
A 16-year-old putting that out.
Yeah, that's right. They have better technology for that than the 40-year-old. Let's keep the record straight.
It could be a 16-year-old wearing a Che Guevara shirt and going, I don't know who that is, but he looks cool, and out all kinds of crap. I mean, it's amazing what we can do nowadays on social media to convince people that something is right when in fact it's nonsense.
And I think we're so gullible.
That.
Yeah, I think we're gullible, and we go in towards that. So what happens is you've got these people who are all frenzied and all, and hi to Joni. She says that she was sorry to miss the ball. It was lovely last year. Yeah, hey, Joni, be part of the crew and come with us next year, because we definitely want to get a table next year for the ball. But it's one of those things that at some point, doesn't somebody have to step up and say, okay, we're going to wait and see what the facts are. Here's what we know for sure right now. Here are some things. And you can say, and we've done this on our show, okay, this is what we know. We've heard this, but we don't have the ability to fact check that right now, so we will follow up with you, kind of a thing. I just think, and especially in going back to the police and to our men and women in blue who, God bless them, they're the ones who are running towards trouble when we're running away. And so because you've got this small group of loud people, like you discussed, getting all worked up and all in a frenzy, and half the stuff they're worked up about isn't even real. So where do we as citizens have responsibility? Yeah. It just makes me crazy.
Thing, right? So I want to, we had Fredo come up to the
Yay, Fred!
The studio.
He delivered peeps.
And I know he's listening. And we were talking, and he went out and he did his yearly physical because he was one of those guys on Long Island who saw what was going on. And even though he wasn't there, he went afterwards to help dig out and gave up his free time and volunteered to help his fellow men and women on the front line to try to find and save at least one more life out of that rubble from 9/11. And we have men and women that are officers, firemen that go back every year for their physical, and then some don't make it back.
Right.
And yet we're going to criticize, are you cereal? Man, pass me the cornflakes because you're a bunch of snowflakes.
Well, and I didn't even realize that. So and Fred, just such an amazing guy, one of our members of the crew, and we just love him. I didn't know until he came in studio Friday that that's something that those of you who were, and you know what, JP, God only knows what he saw when he was digging through stuff. These police officers, one of the things that they pointed out that Mike and Leilani had pointed out when they were giving out different awards and they were talking about the fallen soldiers and the spouses and families they left behind, that these are men and women who are seeing things that no human being should ever be made to see. But God bless them because they choose to see it. They know that they can go out there and any day their number can be up. But they choose to go and support us anyways. And then you've got, like, even Fred, now he kind of played it off, but he's got some residual issues with his lungs as a result of helping after 9/11 happened. You're right. Why aren't we giving credit to these people? I don't have the guts to go and do what they do. So God bless them. I'm so grateful that people do have guts like that and do have the bravery and do feel that calling to do that. You're right. What the heck?
Well, I think we need to take and all the police defunders and let them go run in first. Quit calling 911.
Are y'all volunteering?
To fund the police.
Yes, yeah. So if somebody comes to your next door neighbor's house, they've got a gun, they've got a mask on, they've come in with the intent to rob and kill you, and destroy and damage your property in your home. Okay, so if you're a defund the police person, are you going to be the volunteer that goes and helps with that crisis? That's a good point.
Yeah,
let's start that movement. Did you just say not? Not.
I sure did.
We're in 7th grade.
And that is not KNOT for spring weddings, let me just tell you.
Did we just give them a plug? Not a sponsor, but they can be.
They could be.
There you go.
Here's what it comes down to, right? How miserable have you had to be in your life to come out and purposely go against men and women who stand up, not only for freedom, so I'm talking about our military,
right,
and go on to foreign lands to help preserve and protect. Then you go against the men and women who dress up every day, put on that uniform, put on those belts that they have got to wear and all that heavy equipment, and they go out every day from their families to take care of you and preserve your life. How miserable of a childhood did you have, and what kind of woke society do you think you woke up on? Dude, Argentina can't wait for you to fly home. And so feel free at any time. Venezuela's waiting for you too.
And boy, howdy, if you do not like America, if you think we are such a bad country, you know what? Bust a move on somewhere else. You know what? Wish you the best. But yeah, go check out another country. Go check out another country and see how bad America is. I mean, give me a
And
break.
here's where I don't want you to get confused with my statement. It's not, if I disagree with you, John, you're telling me I'm a bad person and leave.
No, that's not it at all.
That's not
We
what I'm
welcome
saying.
that. We welcome that on the show.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is our police, our fire, our first responders, our military. That's what I'm talking about very specifically, because here's the truth of it. And we're going to talk about this at some point. I put out a meme that Kathy had sent me with different things you need ID for versus what you don't.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. I've got a lot of friends that don't agree with me on this topic. And
I'm flabbergasted by that, JP. I'm flabbergasted by that.
But tons of responses, and everybody were civil. They had good arguments. They respected each other. Nobody put anybody down. And I had like 23 threads going at one time.
Wow.
On the conversation. And friends of mine and I, we were sitting down and we were having that conversation as well. And nobody disrespected anybody. Everybody used their brains rather than using their reactionary mouth. And it paid off because a good discourse came out. So I'm not talking about, well, if you disagree with me, you got to go. No. If you don't,
that's a great part of America. We don't have to agree. We've got freedom of speech. At least right now we do, kind of.
Yeah, well, that may be led to be seen too by the mainstream media.
That's a whole other story for a whole other day.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is not me saying if you disagree with me, then you can leave. No, if you don't support the people that preserve and protect us on a daily basis because of a few bad apples, then you need to go.
Yeah.
Where on earth are you in your life where you think it's okay to not have a fireman or a police officer? Why don't you drive up to Portland and see what those citizens up there think?
Right.
You know, it's one thing to protest for a day. It's another thing to tear a city down for a lifetime. And that's what's
whole
going
different
thing.
Yep.
They're figured out in their liberal voting card. You know what? This isn't cool anymore. They're destroying our city.
Right. Right.
And so my thing is, if you don't love it, then leave it. See ya.
Yep. And I'm dumbfounded that, and maybe it's because we didn't have, a group. We had a generation where you don't have people having to go and fight in war. I don't know what it is. It's almost like a sense of entitlement, and then you feel like you can pass judgment on everybody else and any other organization. You could just, and like I said, okay, are there police officers who there have been issues with? Yes. Just like there are teachers who have done inappropriate things. There's somebody in every arena of life. There are doctors who shouldn't have been operating on people who, there's always your bad actors. Okay. But when you've got the majority, I mean, we're talking overwhelming majority of people who are in it for the right reason. They just want to serve. They just want to protect their fellow man. Then you're right. If you're on the other side of the fence from that, and you can't, you feel the need to go spit in the face of a police officer or scream obscenities at them, then you know what? This isn't the country for you. And guess what?
No, you need to go.
And you know what? And then call our show when you do go over somewhere like Venezuela or one of these other countries where. And let's see if you can go over there and you can have your woke opinions over there welcomed by the government. Let's see how that works out for you. Those are places where if you're gay, you get stoned and throw off a building. There are places where if you're a woman, you can't be seen in a place where men are because you don't have the ability to vote and you're treated less than the family dog. So, again, do some research. But and then speaking of woke, JP, and Cleo's the one who produced this segment and brought this to our attention, and that is the mascots. And I don't know that we have even enough time to talk about all the different mascots because even South Garland, they just recently changed their mascots from the Colonels to, I think, the Titans. But let's talk about, it was in, was it Portland, I think? Yeah, it was in Portland. It was a Portland high school that now says the choice of the new mascot, Evergreen trees, could be a problem due to lynching connotations. JP, what is your thought on that?
Due to what kind of connotation?
Lynching, because it's a tree and because people used to be lynched in trees. So now in Portland, where they wanted to have, Portland has,
Did they let
abundance of
people in
beautiful
wintergreen
trees. And
I thought those were oaks.
see, and here's the thing. So at some point, so now you're saying a tree, an evergreen tree, cannot be a mascot. I mean, at some point when trees are offensive, are we going to live in a society where everybody's offended by everything and we just become so generic and we just stop communicating and talking?
Well, yes, that's why we want you to stop talking in pronouns. See, be talking in them
Yeah,
and us and we.
Yep.
So here's what's funny about this, right? So we're uncomfortable with statues.
Right.
So we removed them. So what are they going to do up in the Northwest? Are they going to go ahead and start removing evergreen trees?
And again, and we're talking a part of the country which is so beautiful because of the trees. So now, what did trees do? And I get it. Were people lynched back in the day?
Symbol of anger?
Yeah, I mean,
how did trees become?
Well, and here's the thing.
I mean, come on.
Okay, were people hung from trees? Were black people hung from trees back in the day? Yes, and it's horrific. And my gosh, that's god awful. But again, then when do you make trees? Then let's not misrepresent history. Let's teach history accurately, and let's talk about, hey, guess what? This is what happened. We don't want to repeat this. This is a good thing that happened. We want to repeat this. This is a bad thing. We don't want to repeat this. But again, now you've got a woke society jumping on evergreen trees as a mascot.
Yeah, my thing is, how did the tree become the representation of a hanging symbol? I mean, give me a break here. The trees were here long before we were here.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know
it's
how you pit that
just...
against a poor tree. I mean, these tree huggers need to go up and hug a tree and ask them.
Well, and
do you feel like you are being
and I thought it's funny that you say that, JP, because I think tree hugger, you think of somebody who's more liberal and who's all about saving the environment, and environment's great, don't litter, okay, but it's one of those things that I guess when I saw this, and like I said, Cleo's the one who had brought this to my attention, I thought, okay, I'm very confused because I thought like tree hugging was a thing. So I guess now, is tree hugging bad?
Yeah, well, I guess we're going to find out, because I'm sure they're going to tell us. Here's where I come down on all of that, right? Again, I get it that your opinion, you wanted to change your mascot. If your community, if your small local community, that's how they feel, and the majority want that, so be it. And you can carry the day, that's your business. But
and if you put those,
that's not how we think.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing, JP, I know what you're leading towards. If you're in a community and you're elected officials, and then the majority of the people decide that's the way it is, well, okay, then that's who you've elected. That's what you choose. But my gosh, don't shove that down my throat and make me some bad person if I still think trees are beautiful.
Exactly. And that's where I was going with that, is that you hear in my voice, there's no judgment.
Right.
If that's what you want, that's how things are. It doesn't violate the U.S. Constitution.
Not breaking the law.
And you know what? Yeah. Not my business. It's your business. God bless you for doing what you're doing. You got active in your government, because I've always promoted that. Young people active in government.
Absolutely.
Make a difference, make a change. And so if that's what you want, great. But again, just like you said, Kathy, and again, that's where I was going, don't pass judgment on me because I don't agree with you. Because then that turns into, hey, I'm glad you're using the system. I'm glad you're participating too. You're just an idiot.
Yeah.
Because if you can't let me be me, then why should I let you be you?
Well, and you're so right. You're right. And then so basically, if I've got to stop my thoughts and my feelings, and I can't express my what my stance on a topic, then isn't my First Amendment right being taken away from me?
Pretty much.
So are we any longer America if that happens? Because isn't that like just like the crux of what we are? We do have freedom of speech here.
Well, let me tell you something. It's still America, because I still got enough power in my body to raise an American flag.
Amen.
I may not be the fastest guy. I may not be the quirkiest guy, but I'm pretty smart and I know how to prepare. And I'll just run like next to guys like Fred and Nathan because they're faster than me and they'll protect me.
I know, yeah. We have friends who we know where we're going, right, JP? We know who we're hanging out with in the zombie apocalypse.
That's exactly right. But, in all truthfulness, the truth of it is that there are enough people in this country that are willing to pick up that pole and that flag and carry that flag across the battlefield if that's what's necessary to make sure that we don't lose America. Right. And it shouldn't have to come to that.
Yep.
It should never have to come to that. Again, I go back to the thread that we're going to talk about here coming up in the future about voting ID.
Oh, yeah. We're hitting that on Wednesday. We're hitting that on Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, good.
Well, if we have time, Wednesday's pretty packed.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we've got, we'll have obviously Senator Paxton with the Senate Minute. We'll have Ask Dr. Be Good with all things public ed and advocating, and especially right now at the end of session. Yes, and then we also
have Site Mark.
And we have one of the Miss Texas candidates. Actually, I believe it's Miss Plano, who has written a children's book. Who's going to be on? Real quick, I do want to mention that Cleo said that the tree mascot was to replace the Native American mascot. So that's very interesting. And so at this point, what are you going to be, a dust mite? I mean, seriously, what is there left to be a mascot?
Well, if you're a warring dust mite, that might be cool. I'm just saying.
We might be on to something.
We might be. But I'm gonna go back and side with the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah.
And with their organization working with other Indian organizations, they're not apologizing for being the Atlanta Braves. They're not going to change because of some self-acclaimed social justice warrior who is woke. And again, the Braves are doing just fine. They faded that heat, showed what they do in the community, the Indian community, and that the Indian community supports the Atlanta Braves using the name Braves. And so, you know what? This gets my Kiss My Butt award.
Which you seem to be giving a lot of those out lately, JP.
Yeah, I know. Big butt.
Oh, now I've got that song. I like big butts and I cannot lie. Now I've got that song going in my head.
Okay. So
that's time to sign off, right? we should be hearing the extra music. When Kathy starts singing Sir Mix-a-Lot, that means the music should be playing and we should be on our way out.
We should be.
All right. Love you, my friend, and love to the crew. We love y'all.
Well.
Yeah. Wednesday, Friday, tons to talk about. We've got, coming up this morning, we've got Heart and Soul of Texas Women. And then what else? We've got the Lawyer Show Thursday.
Ask Dr. Be Good.
Ask Dr. Be Good. Oh, yeah, she had a great show Sunday. And then we've got This Pink Cloud on Friday, a number of shows. And be looking, and it looks like we've got one, maybe two more new shows joining us. So I'm real excited about that. One may be a little bit controversial. So anyway, so we're super excited. Y'all have a blessed week, and we'll see you soon.